Our last one, number 14, is devaluation even when there's repair. So this is similar to one of the ones we've already talked about. There's a little bit of a nuance here that I want to touch upon. And this can happen with basically what a lot of people experience as flooding. So a person's nervous system basically can become, and this also ties into our last one of really compressing a lot of time into a certain amount of space. You can get into a place where a person just becomes overwhelmed. And their central nervous system, and we can just talk about just purely physical, their central nervous system basically starts to kind of like fritz out. And they can't actually hold the intensity of the interaction. You can get very esoteric. Their chakras are, not fully aligned into their physical body. And, their higher eighth dimensional self is doing everything they can to resource them. But at the end of the day, the human body can only take so much. What do you then do when you are overwhelmed? How do you, as the individual, you can only control yourself. How do you then try to create a container of safety for yourself and the other person? I don't even mean like physical safety. I mean just safety as like nervous system safety. How integrated are you to be able to take a deep breath and then actually lower the cortisol physically and then lower whatever emotional stress you and your partner may be experiencing? And this is incredibly valuable for any aspect of the dynamic in your interpersonal relationship. So when there's an argument, when there's confusion, when there's miscommunication, or when there's been a legitimate error and mistake, error as in like, I done fucked up, this person called me out, I made a mistake. How do I then regulate my own emotions and actually come back and actually lower the intensity of the dynamic so we can then be clear-headed and then repair and then actually be forward-looking to then make positive changes in the relationship so we can avoid that particular thing in the future. Now, we can look at these issues that arise, whether it's flooding, a mistake that occurs, anything that we can experience, we can see them either as obstacles that we need to like burst through or that we were too stupid to avoid, and we can be very derogatory. Or what I like to do, just because it is fun for me to think in this way, we can think of ourselves as like spaceships, and there's this asteroid, and I'd prefer to not hit the asteroid, but I've got to deal with the asteroid. I can either go around it so I can avoid it, but maybe the asteroid's so big. Instead, I'm going to very carefully go through it. I'm going to mine that asteroid. I'm going to mine it for rare minerals. I'm going to mine it for water. I'm going to mine it for helium-3. I'm going to learn from this obstacle and no longer view it as an obstacle. So when we're flooded, we just fucking slam into that asteroid. And that super sucks. And it probably super sucks for the asteroid if that asteroid is our partner, right? It super sucks for us too, because we then don't get the proverbial helium-3, the oxygen, the platinum, whatever was in there in the relationship that we want to learn from. So when we view these situations as learning opportunities for ourselves, all of these things, we then can actually learn and grow. When we are flooded, it's very hard to do this. And so for this one, we really want to take a deep breath, come back to ourselves, and then view each and every one of these experiences, even divorces, failed relationships, the time that you got your heart broken, whatever it is, the time that, someone told you that they wanted to, live happily ever after and they just turned into a one-night stand, whatever, as a learning experience. But then you have to really mine that experience for wisdom and then move forward and make new decisions. Next time, you actually have to make new decisions. So, as promised, we've got four more things at the end of this video that are kind of meta learning. We already touched on one of them, and this is the magnetism, and that really magnetism has responsibility. So if we want to think of ourselves as highly magnetic, and if you are not yet as magnetic as you'd like, I have a coaching program for this. It's very, very effective. Once you have a degree of magnetism where you're drawing people into your field, you have to understand that you have a high degree of responsibility there. A really good example of this is if you have a pool in your home, you have to put a fence around it. There's like a law about this because the pool itself will draw attention. Like kids will come to the pool and they'll swim. And if they drown, like that shit's on you. Like you didn't have a fence. You're not keeping your pool safe. Like you're in trouble now. you in interpersonal relationships and in sexual dynamics, you are like that. So if you are highly magnetic, you actually have to then treat that magnetism with respect and not have predatory or be predacious. And so what that means is not use that magnetism or use your sexuality in a predatory manner. And I don't even mean predatory as in like trying to fuck someone. I mean to use it as a tool that is either deceptive or in some way disingenuous. And so if you're strong with your magnetism, you've got to be clean and you have to be precise. And anything else is actually a huge liability to you, because people will then think that you are then either leading them on, that you are doing something harmful. And I notice this with a lot of younger males who are very attractive. Women will come into their fields. The males will not communicate very well about what they're looking for. And then the females will feel very taken advantage of. And, rightly so, if the males are not actually communicating. And the inverse can happen too. In our culture now, there are many young females that are, looking to just, I guess, have a high body count because they think that's a good idea. I don't think it is, but, teach their own, I guess. And there are males that I interact with in my group coaching programs that they feel very, preyed upon in that way. Either way, whatever your magnetism is, treat it with great care and respect yourself and respect the other people that you're interacting with. Number two here is consent clarity. So ambiguity is a consent violation in slow motion. Consent is everything. In my opinion, in my opinion, we live in a metaphysical world in which there are laws for planes of reality and then axiomatic truths that are true everywhere. And I will talk about this another time. Otherwise my producer's going to get mad at me and we'll have to leave soon. Either way, I'm going to talk about the law of consent. This is actually, I believe, an axiomatic truth. So it is true everywhere. Of all of the laws that exist, I find that this is like probably the most important. If you're going to pick one, pick consent. It will never turn you astray. It will not do you wrong. Ambiguity is, again, a consent violation in slow motion. So if you are very ambiguous, you're not being clear, there's no way that other people can consent to interact with you or you with them. And so what this looks like is if the container that you are creating is unclear, people can't consent to actually enter into it. They don't know if you're going to be part of the relationship, what the relationship is, what the friendship is. And so if you don't know yourself and really know what you're looking for, you are just a walking consent violation. Like, I'm thinking of someone very specific in my recent past, just a walking consent violation, because this individual was not clear about what they wanted and then would say like different things. Now, from an internal family systems perspective, there were multiple warring parts, there was polarization, and so many things were true for them. But again, that is then a consent violation due to ambiguity. So in this way, clarity protects tenderness for you, for your beloved other, and labels keeps things very clean, clear, and knowable. And if you then put a label on something and you then don't feel good about it yourself later, you need to change it and communicate it, but you should have enough clarity inside of yourself to be okay with whatever those labels are, and then don't enter into a relationship, particularly if it's a sexual dynamic, without that level of clarity. Number three is repair culture versus drama culture. So this is something that I learned the real hard way. I'm just thinking of some very, very extreme examples for myself. High chemistry couples, they don't need more intensity, right? They need better repair. So what this means is when you are a very intense person and you are with a very intense person, maybe you're married to them, maybe you live together and you have commingled your businesses and you travel the world together. You don't need to optimize for intensity. You need to optimize for repair. And so what this means is things that look like high drama in the dynamic are indicative of systemic problems in both individuals, right? Me too, right? Both individuals. And so I did not know this just because of my childhood trauma and my interactions with my mother as a child, and seeing my father and my stepfather seeing my father and then being modeled also with several stepfathers, because my mother got married and divorced five times, was married to a woman for 15 years. A lot of complicated modeling for me. I thought that conflict in a relationship was like an okay thing. This is not the case, right? And so we want to understand, how does that repair really look like in practice, and are we avoiding these high drama situations? Now, we've touched on these things in our previous segments here, but I really want to just like emphasize this as one of the meta learning points, that again, repair and drama are two very, very, very different things. And if it feels like drama in the relationship, you are then not repairing correctly. And if you can only repair half, like your half of the table, the other person has to repair their half of the table. And if you keep having the same arguments over and over and over again, it really is indicative of a very systemic problem. Our last one here is know thyself. I know, Socrates said it better. In relationship at 40 now, I really, when I was younger, when I was 20, when I was 30, I really had no idea what I was optimizing for. I knew that I wanted to have whatever happily ever after looked like, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that felt like, because I didn't yet know what myself felt like in my own body. And so I wasn't able to then share that with my other person, or know when our commingling brought me closer to self or brought me farther away from self. And in that case, I would bring myself farther away from myself, right? I would disenfranchise myself from myself. We can blame other people, or we can take responsibility for ourselves. I choose to do the latter. I choose to take responsibility. The only way for us to actually know if the dynamic is bringing us into alignment, right, with our chakras aligned, and we get Shaktipat and Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi and all sorts of cool fucking spiritual words, to know that we are actually there, present fully with ourselves, feeling good, co-creating joy. We have to know what that looks like outside of relationship. And that's a real challenge. I don't think you have to be 40 to figure that out. Maybe with as much childhood trauma as I had, maybe you do. I don't know. But you have to spend that time really digging in first on yourself, and then bringing that part of yourself to the relationship, and then pulling back a little bit, and then bringing it back to the relationship, new and evolved, and then pulling back a little bit. And this isn't about being disconnected from the relationship. It's the Visky's Pisces. That's a very cool sacred geometrical symbol. It's two circles overlapping, and there's a third circle in between. I like to have the circles overlapped a lot more, just because that's fun for me. But ultimately, you want to have enough space outside of the relationship that you know who you are. This is the know thyself part. You know who you are outside of the dynamic, and that you have a self outside of the relationship. This can be a challenge, particularly people with trauma. And so by knowing what that core kernel of self is, you then actually can gift that to your partner. And they then can receive it if they have that core kernel of self. And so knowing who you are, at least right now, for people who are younger in their 20s, it's a little bit of a challenge. They're still figuring their stuff out. I mean, heck, 31, Saturn returns, still figuring their stuff out. I'm 40. Compared to my friends who are 50, 60, and 70, they think I'm like a fucking child, man. Like, it's so funny. Like, I talk to 20-year-olds, they're like, oh, unk. And I'm like, bro, I got 8-year-old friends that are fucking like buco millionaires, and they think you are still in your mother's womb. And those people, the ones that are successful and who do well and are happy, they know themselves and they've spent time. And some of them are in long-term committed relationships. And some of those relationships, they've been in those relationships longer than I've been alive, which is wild. So know thyself. Ultimately, in conclusion, if you value love, if you value relationship, if you value joy, the person that you decide to marry, this is going to be the most important decision that you make in your life. You get to make it multiple times. It's like bankruptcy. I've not had to declare bankruptcy, but like in the VC world, they say, it's okay. You can declare bankruptcy and start again. It's okay. You can get married and get divorced and start again. At the end of the day, that decision, in my opinion, is the most important decision you'll make. Like, that's a crazy concept. If you just think about like, this is literally the most important person that I will interact with on a day-to-day basis. Not a lot of people necessarily think that. They're just like, oh, whatever, trophy wife, trophy husband, like whatever. No, like if you want to truly co-create something with another human, like co-creating another human, having a kid, you are co-creating another entity. That person that you choose to do that with, that's of vital importance to your life, both for joy and as a fucking liability. That other person is your greatest liability too. Now, I choose to not view it that way, although it has been a liability for me in a big way. I choose to choose the joy aspect, but it is so, so important. And so I hope that some of these things have been helpful to help clarify some learning that I've had. We're going to continue to talk about this stuff a lot. I talk about it almost every day in my coaching. So the beauty of this is our culture is totally fucked. It's in chaos. Nobody has any idea what the fuck's going on. Some people have a little bit of an idea what's going on. The cool thing is that you don't have to do this alone. There are some really great communities that you can join. Again, I have a coaching program. I know so many other coaches. They're great spiritual communities. There's many, many, many traditions that can help give some framework and some guidance so you can make that choice with another person well. Because when that goes well, in my experience, it is the most beautiful thing in the universe. And I do believe personally that it is kind of the point. I think Avicii said it best. It's like the game of life and like the prize is love. I don't know. I like Avicii and I like EDM. And that makes a lot of sense to me. If in the game of life, if there were to be a prize, that prize would be love. And who you choose to share that love with would then be the most important playmate that you have. And so choose well and don't rush it. Like really take your time. And then when you found a person who you're building with, really invest into it, but don't lose sight of yourself. And if you have to pull away, that's okay. And know that at the end of the day, they'll be okay and you'll be okay once you have that kernel of self and you know who you are. And you can maybe come back to them or come back to someone else. But at the end of the day, don't squander your time and make that choice. Make it really count. It'll be the most important thing that you do.